Welcome to Passive Investors Playbook. I'm your host, Charlie Hardage. In each episode, we'll sit down with successful people that turn to real estate to build and grow their wealth. We do a deep dive into why they chose real estate and what makes it so attractive to them. We explore why people in their industry could also benefit from passively investing in real estate. Whether you're a beginner or an experienced investor, a doctor or a professional athlete, love your job or hate your job, our show is here to help you build a profitable real estate portfolio while maximizing your free time and minimizing stress. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn from some of the best in the business. Welcome to Passive Investors Playbook. All right, so before we get into the interview with Mike Herman, just want to point out a couple things. This is a longer episode than what is normally on the show. And Mike is phenomenal at underwriting. And so while the episode's a little bit longer and Mike goes into a lot of depth about underwriting, I do think it's extremely important. Just in general, there's a lot of things that you can do to tweak the numbers with underwriting. And Mike does a phenomenal job at kind of pointing some of those out. So you don't have to take a 100-hour underwriting course and financial modeling course like Mike did. And again, while it is a little long, there's so much action in this. I didn't want to edit anything. I wanted to have Mike share all of his insights with you. And so just maybe you have to listen to it in a couple sittings. But it's phenomenal. So I'm really excited about this interview, and Mike has so much to offer. I didn't want to cut it short. Thanks for listening. Welcome to the Passive Investors Playbook, where we talk to successful people that got into real estate. I'm your host, Charlie Hardage. Today, we have a special guest who brings a very unique perspective to the world of real estate investing. Mike Herman is a healthcare professional who has successfully navigated the challenges of both healthcare and real estate. Mike is also the managing member and senior underwriter at Guardian Multifamily with almost 2,000 units to his name. Mike and his wife, Alli, are both nurses from Northern California. They began investing in single-family and small multifamily properties in 2019. In 2021, they pivoted and they started investing passively into apartment deals. Mike has a passion for numbers and financial analysis and has completed over 100 hours of commercial real estate financial modeling. He is always looking for opportunities to add value that are both realistic and impactful for the community. Mike, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, Charlie. Thanks for having me. Pleasure.
Absolutely. Can you share with the audience a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. So I've been a nurse for 13 years up here in Northern California. I started as an ICU nurse, went on to emergency, and then I've been flying as a flight nurse for the last 9 years now. That's where I met my wife. She flew for 10 years. Now she's a nurse in the ER here in our small little city in Northern California. We started investing. You want to know more about our real estate journey at this point, or?
Actually, I want to talk about the flight nurse because that's awesome.
Yeah.
You said you've been doing that for 9 years. Alli did it for about 10.
It's an exciting job. It can definitely be more challenging than we like at times. A lot of people think it's, scraping people off the road and that's all we do. But a lot of what we do is transfers. So we'll take people from one hospital to another, either a rural facility to our hospital or to a bigger tertiary center in a bigger city that maybe has services that the hospital doesn't have. So it's about, I'd say about 70 to 80% of what we do is actually transfers from hospital to hospital. And then about 20 to 30% is actual scene calls where we'll go out to a car crash or a rural area where somebody's had an injury or something. So yeah, I like to say I'm a nurse by night and a real estate investor by day because I do work night shift. I work from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Unless we get a late flight, then it could be 8 or 9 or 10 a.m. You never know. But then thankfully, because I work nights, I'm free in the day to do this kind of stuff. So we just work 3 days a week. So it frees me up a lot of time. I was looking at, what else can I do with my time other than sit around, So decided to get into real estate investing and see how we could diversify that way.
Man, that's awesome. That's really cool. So combine about 23 years of experience. Well, actually, I think you said Alli's been a flight nurse for 10 years and she's done some other stuff. So probably 25, 26 years of experience there between the two of you. Exciting job some of the times, and then others just maybe boring transport. Maybe it's not boring. Those are my words.
Like, honestly, those are some of the best flights is the boring ones, because
yeah,
then you really enjoy the scenery, and we work with great people, my partners. I work with a paramedic as my partner,
okay.
and then a pilot, of course, has to chauffeur us around, and we all get along really well, and it's just like going to work and hang out with your buddies, and it's it's a fun job, but at the same time, if I had to work a W-2 job, like this would be the job I want to do. But eventually, of course, looking at the horizon, like how long am I going to do this? I've done it 9 years. It's stressful. It's exhausting.
Right.
COVID, sapped everybody in the medical field. So we are certainly looking at how we can replace our active income with passive income to eventually get to a point where we can scale back a little bit on the W-2 side.
That's phenomenal. So I'd love to ask you how you got into real estate. And you did mention that, since you work 3 days a week, those are very stressful. You have some, crazy hours right now. But you had some free time. And how'd you get into real estate?
Sure. So I had some money. We sold a house, had some leftover money from that, and had to figure out what am I going to do with this? I know it's not going to just sit in the bank. I talked to one of the ER doctors at work that I work with, who I knew was doing some investing. He was investing in single family homes in Birmingham, Alabama, actually, of all places. And so I asked him, like, how did you get into this? What do you recommend I do with this capital? And he said, well, why don't you hire somebody that can advise you with what to do with it? And he recommended Tom Wheelwright's Wealth Ability Program. So I called them up, paid them, it's not a small chunk of change to do 6 months of coaching, where we met monthly and went over my goals, went over timeframes, things like that. And basically he said, like, you can pick any asset class you want. You can do real estate, you can do oil, you can do stocks, whatever you want, but pick one and stick with it and get good at it. So after talking with him for over that time, we decided that I like real estate. It makes sense to me. It's an object I can feel, touch. I own a home. I know what it's like to live in one. So why don't we do real estate? So during that process, I went ahead and was listening to the Bigger Pockets podcasts, reading their books. I knew I didn't want to invest in California, where we live, for hopefully obvious reasons. So I got on the MLS in Texas because I knew Dallas, Texas was the place to be. Never been there before. And I found a duplex in Grand Prairie. It was $266,000. It looked beautiful, all done up in the pictures. So I called the realtor and I made her an offer right then. Never been there before. Made her a nice offer, and she took it. And I bought the thing. Never seen it before at all. And called 3 or 4 different property management companies in the Dallas area. Picked the cheapest one, and they went ahead and started managing for me. So that was mistake number 1: is never go with the cheapest one. Still never been there before. They did a good job. They got good tenants in there. They were paying. And then I found out, this is mistake number 2, that Texas actually has high property taxes. Yeah, I didn't realize that. And so my property tax bill adjusted, went up to about $7,600 a year for that property. And my cash flow went to absolutely zero. Just nothing. So I said, well, I'm going to get out of Texas and never invest here again. And so I went over and looked in Alabama, where my that ER doctor had recommended, in Birmingham. Well, I went to a nursing conference in Nashville. So I was like, let me just drive down and check out Huntsville, because that's the closest big city in Alabama to Nashville. So drove down there, looked around, fell in love with the city. It is an awesome city. I've never been to the South before then, and just great people, great food, obviously. And because you're in Nashville, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
About an hour and a half.
Okay. Love visiting the area, and just really liked Huntsville a lot. So I was like, I want to invest here. Went back again. I met wholesalers. I met property management, realtors, and just really got plugged into the community there, got toured around the city, started getting deal flow from wholesalers, and ended up buying over the course of the next year, 2019, 2020, ended up buying a total of 1 4-plex, 3 duplexes, and a single family home. I had sold the duplex in Grand Prairie at that point because of the taxes and my cash flow, and put it all in Huntsville. So fast forward now, you want me to keep going into?
Yeah.
And a multifamily. So fast forward now to 2021, those properties were doing great. We hit COVID at that point. I had a couple delinquent, high delinquency tenants that just were kind of taking advantage of the COVID situation and whatnot. Finally went out to Huntsville and saw my properties. I'd never seen them before, and toured them, and realized this lady who hadn't been paying me throughout COVID had a nice TV and seemed to be working 3 jobs, as she told us. She didn't know we were the owner when we were there. I was just like, I am tired of dealing with this and having to be the one that deals with this. So, when I look at like my cash on cash on this, I'm in the high, maybe around 10%. Once I factor in, oh, hey, your fridge went out. Hey, you need a new roof over here. It looks good on paper to be getting, hey, I'm making like $8,000 a month. That looks awesome. But once I start subtracting all my CapEx, all my delinquency, things like this coming and going, it's like my overall return is not that great. So meanwhile, in early 2021, I got it was a Facebook targeted ad about multifamily from the Brad Sumrock program. And it was a week-long challenge, like a 5-day challenge in February. And I went ahead and did it, listened to it. And, at the time you start listening to it and you're like, yeah, this is kind of gimmicky. This, can't be real, blah, blah, blah. Well, I kept watching it. And then I started talking to some of the members in the group that I had met just from being in that challenge. And at that point, I realized like, these are normal people. Like, this is a Marine over here. This is a teacher over here. This is a doctor, whatever. Like, there's the whole diverse range of different people that are doing this and making it work for them. It's like, you know what? I've been doing this, single family, small multifamily now for a couple of years. I think it's time we step up and try to do multifamily syndication. So we did. We joined the Brad Sumrock mentorship group. That's where I met you. Is on one of our first bus tours. We sat next to each other, and never looked back. I kept those single family properties for another. I sold them kept them another year and decided, I need liquidity for multifamily. Let's go ahead and sell. I sold it all as a portfolio. Did not do a 1031 exchange. So I reinvested all that money to get the depreciation I'm happy to talk about that and how that worked. So paying no taxes on a fairly significant gain on those properties in Huntsville, just by reinvesting it. And that's never looked back. And we're doing multifamily full bore ahead now. So happy to jump into that journey too, but I'll give a break there in case you have anything you want to dig into.
Yeah, man, that's extremely inspiring. And I just want to recap that. And then in a minute, I want you to explain cash on cash to the audience. Because I know you're at Guardian Multifamily, you're the senior underwriter. I want to dig into that hardcore later. But I want to kind of recap some of this. And usually what we talk about in the podcast, and Mike, you brought it up without prompt, but you had free time. And you knew that an ER doctor was investing in real estate. So you were able to pick their brain, kind of figure out why Birmingham, I believe it was, or Huntsville, why they were investing there, why real estate, all that. So did you have any other, besides owning a home, did you have any other background in real estate?
No, the only thing was we had bought a lot at one point to build on, and then decided not to and sold it and made some money on it just because of natural appreciation.
Sure.
Nothing that we had done made that property more valuable. So that was it. Other than that, like my dad was a CPA. He passed away in 2006, unfortunately. And I always growing up saw him investing in things and I didn't know why. He had business, he had real estate and little things that I never picked up on or asked why. And now that I look back on it, I'm like, oh, he's a CPA. He understood how to utilize the tax system that was given to us and work it to our advantage. So I guess it would be like unfortunately, I didn't pick his brain enough at the time from him then, but personally, no, at that point, that was it.
So you meet the doctor. Doctor says real estate is a great avenue. Then you go to Tom Wheelwright's coaching program, and they say it doesn't have to be real estate, could be other things. Why'd you pick real estate? I know you mentioned it was something you could feel, touch. You had bought a home. Were there other reasons that you picked real estate as opposed to oil, gas, whatever else?
Yeah, it made the most sense to me in the sense that I can own a home. Like I said, there is. I guess to me, I have invested in other things passively, like oil, like ATMs and things like that. But for something that I want to be actively working on,
Mhm.
I want something that I can go and meet people and have them take me to something that is tangible like this. I know oil is tangible. I know you can go see your drill site. Okay. I know ATMs are tangible. You can go see it. To me, this is something that is needed throughout time, is a home, right? Oil, someday it will go away. ATMs probably someday will go away. Things like that are replaceable. Homes are never replaceable. Apartments are never replaceable. It is like a basic human need is that. And speaking of basic human need is we also like, and we can talk about this more when we get into Guardian later, but we like providing for that basic human need, which is a house, is a shelter over your head. We're not here to take advantage of people and tenants. We want to provide them a safe place and a comfortable place to live. And we can dive more into that later. But so all those reasons, it's not just like what's the best investment, but it's also where can I make the most impact on somebody's life, which is, hey, they need a place to live. Let's make it a nice place for them.
Yeah, I love that. I definitely agree. And that's why personally, I have owned single family in the past, obviously multifamily now, because I think they're very resistant to recessions. They're very resilient, right? Because they need a place to live. It could be a single family, could be a multifamily apartment complex, but they need a place to live. And so that's why I really love multifamily, among many other reasons, and you named several of them. You said something that I hear quite a lot, unfortunately. When you had those 11 units in Huntsville, you were tired of dealing with tenants. I know you had a property management company in Texas. Did you have one in Alabama as well?
I did. She was great, but still, like, I have to deal with things. Like, I get a text pretty much every other day. This broke. What do you want to do about it? Like, well, fix it, obviously. Like, just do your job and fix it. I don't need to know about every single little thing. But not only that, but I would get my monthly report and there's delinquency stacking up. I like my property manager there, but I call, like, what are we doing about this? Well, we're waiting for the rent relief. Well, okay, when's that coming? And there's just like this constant, I am having to constantly deal with the interface of property management. And, I guess we call that asset management, right, at that point. But it's like when it was just me having to be the one that almost did everything, even though I had property management, it just became not worth it, like, for the return. And you asked about the cash on cash. So, the more money I have out of pocket into a deal lowers my cash on cash return. So if I have $100,000 in, I make $10,000 a year on that. That's a 10% cash on cash return, right? If I have $200,000 in the deal and I make $10,000, that's a 5% cash on cash return, because it's based on the amount of money I have in the property. Yeah. Well, to get this amount of properties, I have to have a certain amount of money in for the loan. Boy, I can't even remember. I probably had 200,000 into those properties of my own money, and then by the time like I said, when my money would come in the bank, I would look like wow, that's a lot of money. That's a great amount of rent. Yeah. So if I do math on it, oh, that's my cash on cash is in the 20s. Great. But then I start adding up all my issues throughout the year, like a $3,000 roof repair. Oh, your tenant moved out. We have to do a whole flooring replacement and paint job. There's $3,000. When you're talking about rents that are in the $500 to $1,000 range, and you might be making profit, $300 to $400 on those, a $3,000 hit is a lot of money. That's your entire rent. That's entire year rent on some of those, Yeah. So at first glance, it's like, wow, those are great returns. But when you start actually factoring in your maintenance, your repairs, things like that, you see that it actually cuts down into it pretty quickly. Still great though. I'm not saying not to do single family, because the tenant's still paying my mortgage down and things like that. I did fantastic on those properties. For me, it made more sense to move into multifamily for the scalability, for the just when you have 100 units, let's say, you have on-site maintenance who's dealing with those things real time. You have on-site leasing agents and staff who are dealing with this stuff real time. We actually have weekly asset management calls, where we deal with the delinquencies and to discuss those things. So I'm not just waiting to see my report at the end of every month. We're doing this all real time, it's just the scale is much easier.
Right. I agree. You said a lot of really good points there, Mike, that I want to touch on. The properties, even though you had a property manager for the 11 units, how passive was that for you?
Yeah,
Not very.
no.
And then when you look at the overall return, the cash on cash return, is it worth the amount of work you're putting in? And something you touched on towards the very beginning was you're looking to replace your active income with passive income. So as you said, in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with single family. That's a great way to build wealth, but that's not what you're looking for. You're looking for something that can be a lot more passive. You kind of touched on this, but you also have a team. I know at Guardian Multifamily, you guys have a big team that you underwrite. Brandon does other things. You have other people to do different things in each deal. And so in multifamily syndication, it's not you doing it by yourself. It's not just you and Alli doing it. You have an entire team that's able to focus on the property and focus on their strengths. And so your journey is very similar to mine. I've had several single family homes in the past. Some of them are for the most part passive and some weren't. But then when you look at the overall return, it's like, yeah, that's some decent cash flow. Is it really worth my time? Not really, until I sold the property. And then,
Right.
At that point, got a nice paycheck just due to appreciation. But it was like kind of working for for a few bucks an hour until I sold. And then you get a nice payday, in 3-4 years. So it seems like we have similar stories there. And, a lot of the reasons that you mentioned about multifamily, that's why I like it. Scalable. You have a team, the shelter that you're providing.
If we're being honest, like the cash flow right now in multifamily is not great, so
Right.
it's not like I've replaced it with passive income coming in from the multifamily, but I've decreased the stress and the burden from my single families on me directly. We're still getting our appreciation. Our property values are going up, but because of interest rates, there's just not great passive cash flow right now. But at the same time, for our investors, and why I invested deals passively is I know, the teams that I'm with are improving the property and
Right.
the value is going up. I may not be getting the checks that I was wanting, but I'm not doing anything either.
Right.
All I did was vet the team and invest. And now I trust that the value of those properties are going up. So when we do get that appreciation at the sale, those returns will be fruitful then. And if there's cash flow in the meantime, fantastic. So yeah, I would definitely say my cash flow is less with multifamily right now than it was with, but I'm also not working as much on those properties I've invested passively. Now I'm a general partner, so yes, I'm more active on those deals, but just want to clarify that, yeah, to me, it's a reward of, I'm invested in property. I'm not doing absolutely nothing on, just zero. Yeah. And those properties are going up in value. And someday when we sell them, I'm going to see that. Someday when interest rates maybe come down, we'll get some cash flow. So just want to clarify. Yeah,
no, great point there. I want to kind of, I know I brought up Guardian a little bit. Do you mind maybe talking about what you guys do, what you look for, kind of what roles you guys have at Guardian?
Yep, absolutely. So after we joined the Brad Sumrock mentorship program, that was late February of 2021, started underwriting deals, meeting people throughout the group, going to networking events where I met you. And then by the end of 2021, I had met Andy Eddy, who's one of my partners at Guardian Multifamily. We started underwriting deals together. We actually went out to Huntsville and toured properties together, submitted LOIs together. Just really hit it off that way. His background, he's been in commercial real estate for decades. He goes and purchases like dental offices throughout the country, he purchases office buildings and converts them to these dental offices. So cool. A lot of experience with operations, dealing with contractors, leases, commercial stuff like that. And then by the end of the year, we had met Brandon Wong, who's our other partner. He is an automation wizard. He created a company called Smart Syndicator, which is this full CRM capital raising platform. It is just so robust what it does. And it's very impressive, his ability to his tech side of him. So he's been instrumental in asset management for us as well. And just because he's taking things that are archaic systems and putting it on to a nice automated system online. He's helping out with generating tenant leads through Facebook. He's got a history or a background in Facebook advertising and whatnot. So helping out a lot with that. So we joined forces late 2021 because we just hit it off, underwriting together and seeing. We were invited on a deal and to join a deal. And I looked at the underwriting and said, no, we're not going to do that. So this would have been our first property as general partners. And because I said no to it, Brandon's like, I trust your underwriting skills. Let's join forces and become a group, the three of us. And so that's when we formed Guardian Multifamily. We chose the name Guardian because Brandon is a Marine veteran with my service in nursing as a flight nurse. And then Andy's very active in his church with service and whatnot. We decided that Guardian kind of encompasses our values, like what our goals are. And so when we say Guardian, like what are we guarding? Like we guard our tenants' our tenants' dignity, right? So we have residents that live in our properties. We're not just there to make money off them. They're not just another number on the rent roll, right? Like we care about them and their families and how can we improve them. We care about our investors' capital, right? Like we aren't here to make a ton of money and leave, and we want our investors to get their capital returned to them, number one, and two, hit the returns that we target, that we say. And then number three, we want to guard our employees. We have on-site staff, we have maintenance staff, we have leasing staff, office staff. We want to make sure that we treat them, empower them, we treat them well, we empower them and respect them, and really just give them a nice, fun place to work at the same time. So that's kind of our focus, is those three things of what we want to guard. And we don't see investors as more important than residents. We don't see residents as more important than staff. To us, they're all important equally, because if you have happy staff, they take care of the tenants. If the tenants are happy, they pay their rent. If they pay their rent, we take care of our investors, so while people might say like the investor is the most important thing, while their capital to us is absolutely the most important thing, we see them equally as our residents, of what we want to take care of, because they all take care of each other. We couldn't do this without any one of them. And so for us, that's our main focus. Is we're investors first. While we do syndicate deals, we bring investors' money together to go buy these things. We are investors first. We invest in our properties as well, and we want that money to do well as well. So it's our friends and family investing with us. It's people sometimes that we have met recently in the last few months that we've built relationships with, and we just want to make sure that, like, above all, we're not here to make money before them. Like, right. Everybody has to make money together, and as long as we do what we say, that's how we hit it off. As we just kind of clicked on those values. In terms of our roles, you want me to go into that and how we kind of delegated those things? And
but before you do that, just want to say, I always say that, to your point, Mike, about caring for the tenants, caring for investors' capital, and guarding the employees. I always feel, it's a win-win-win situation, right? If someone's not winning, no one's winning. If the tenants aren't cared for, like you said, they're not, maybe the property isn't cared for, because the employees don't care that much. Well, then the tenants don't care. Then the investors don't get their returns, and you don't get repeat investors. And so I do think it is this, and I hate this buzzword, but this synergy, this everyone has to work together to make it a win-win-win situation. So I just wanted to reiterate that point. I love that point that you said. But yeah, I would love to get into the roles, because I know you focus on underwriting. Can you maybe go over the roles in a deal? And then I love underwriting. I want to get into that a lot.
Absolutely. So there's basically 6 pillars or 6 roles needed to do a multifamily, or really any syndication, right? You need somebody to find a deal, the deal sourcer, the deal maker, somebody that can build the relationships with the brokers, be kind of the boots on the ground that is finding these deals and sourcing them. You need somebody to underwrite those deals, right? Somebody that's going to, once we have a deal, hey, there's a property here, let's underwrite it, see if the financials work. Then you need somebody who's going to be able to raise capital, deal with the investors, right? Investor relations, things like that. And then you need, to be able to get a loan, you have to have somebody with experience, right? The resume piece. So otherwise, if I came off the street and said, hey, I'm going to become a syndicator today, but I have 0 experience, I'm not going to be able to get a loan on these big commercial properties, right? We're looking at, $10, $20 million loans sometimes. Right. We need somebody that has the experience in there. On that same note is you need somebody with net worth and liquidity to be able to get these loans. And then lastly, you need an asset manager, somebody who's going to do the weekly phone calls, who's going to be there popping into the property, dealing with contractors and things. And that's almost a full-time job as well for that person. So there's basically those 6 roles. You don't have to have 6 people filling one person for each of those roles. One person can be, several of those things. So for us, I fell into the underwriting role. When I first started, I was like, well, I'm in California. What am I going to do? What can my role be here? And it's like, well, underwriting I can do from anywhere. I love numbers. I'm super type A. Most flight nurses are pretty type A, although some of my partners would disagree with me. But I'm like the kind of guy that helicopter, when I'm done checking it, is absolutely perfect to how I want everything where I want it. Because when an emergency happens, when stuff goes down, when it hits the fan, as it were, I want to know exactly where everything is, so that when I reach there, it's there because I put it there. And whether there's other people, it's just like a bomb went off in there, and it's I don't know how you find anything, but so because of that, like that's the way my mind works. Is I'm so analytical, and I want things to be just. I'm super OCD like that. Is it kind of just was natural for me to look at rent rolls and financial statements and really love to get into the Excel file and underwrite these things. And so I kind of fell into that role. In terms of like raising capital, investor relations, well, everybody needs to be a part of that. In my opinion, if you're not bringing in your friends and family, whatever, like at how big these raises are, it's really hard to raise that kind of money by yourself. So I think the whole team is part of that. But like Brandon and Andy, they live in Dallas. So I'm not in Dallas meeting brokers and going on property tours with them. I don't need to be. I don't need to spend $1,000 to fly out there and back and deal with that. Right. So it naturally was them to be looking in Dallas. Now, I love Huntsville as a market still, even though I sold my properties there. So I've flown to Huntsville several times and toured properties. So to be the deal maker over in Huntsville, it's a long ways for me to go. Like, why would I go all the way there? Well, it's because I love it and I love the barbecue. So I head out there and meet my friends. I've made friends now that are brokers, and I enjoy going and seeing them. So we kind of share that role just based on the market we're in terms of the deal finder. And then in terms of asset management, so far on the deals that we've general partnered in, which I don't think I talked about, we closed our first deal in December of 21. It was 194 units in Fort Worth. We brought in that deal a little bit late to help with the capital raise towards the end. So we're not the primary asset management of that deal. So we didn't have to bring the net worth liquidity, the resume experience, because that was already in place, right? But I wrote it, agreed with it. We joined, helped raise capital. And now Brandon is a junior asset manager on that deal. So we can learn that process. But our goal with Guardian Multifamily is Andy has this, decades of asset management, essentially commercial on that dental office side. And now we're just going to transition that into the multifamily space. And then Brandon's role with his investor relations, his ability to automate our systems for capital raising, things like that has just been great. So other than me being OCD though, like just getting back to the underwriting, like I didn't have any financial training. I'm a nurse, so I take care of people and bodies and not spreadsheets. It just, I gravitated to it. But other than that, I wanted something that spoke to, what gives you any credibility in this. So I was perusing LinkedIn and saw this course called Adventures in Commercial Real Estate, A.CRE. Accelerator course. And so I looked into that, and what it is it's over 100 hours of training. You learn everything about financial modeling in the commercial space. And so what it does is there's you learn about office, you learn about industrial, multifamily, and it's not teaching you how to underwrite, it's teaching you how to financial model. So I can take an Excel spreadsheet and from scratch build in a full underwriting model. And it teaches you how to layer in the debt, how to layer in the splits to your investors and things like that. And there's this, it's really impressive. And it was really helpful for me to learn these processes. Right now, I'm in the process of building our own underwriting model that has some things. We have one through the Sumrock program we use, which is great, but it's not as robust as I'd like it to be. I've looked at other underwriting models out there. Michael Blanc has a great one. But again, it doesn't have exactly everything as I want it. So now what I'm doing is, because I've learned how, I'm building our own. So I think just doing that gave me a little more comfort and credibility to say, hey, I am our senior underwriter, and here's why. I've been through this course. I'm super anal. I can now take a rent roll and show you exactly how I broke it down to come up with our unit mix and our projected rents and whatnot. Yeah, and so I love it. And other people, I meet are like, I don't want any part of Excel. Don't even bring that up
Right.
around because it's so boring. So it's just, everybody you just kind of gravitate to the role you like.
Yeah.
And
I love that. So you found that course on LinkedIn, spent 100 hours. It's a lot of time. Spent 100 hours just going through that. You're in the process of building your own underwriting model. Um, I love underwriting myself. But want to ask you, Mike, why do you think the underwriting is so important? I mean, there's obvious reasons, like you got to know the numbers, but and maybe the better question, Mike, would be why is getting as accurate as possible can be instead of providing a range?
sure.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, it's incredibly easy to make any deal look good. You can show me any deal you want, and I can make it look really good for you. And I can do it in such a way that unless you have underwriting before, you wouldn't know what I
would
did.
never know. Yeah.
So that's number one, is like part of guarding our investors' capital is I want to make sure that I know if we're bringing our investors in a deal that we didn't acquire, say we're going to go help raise for it, I want to know that I looked at it and I can pinpoint those things. I know exactly where to look, you know what I mean? To see, are they pulling those levers to make it look better than it should? That's number one. Number two is because it's so easy to do that, like we don't want when we bring a deal to our investors and say like, oh, you're going to double your money in 5 years, let's say, right? Like, well, based on what? Like, is that based on the cash on cash return and the appreciation? Is it just appreciation? Because some deals have zero cash on cash return, say a development deal, for instance, when we're not dealing with development right now. I just bring that up because it just depends on what their goal is. Right. And so what I first look at with my investors is what are the timeframes you are looking for the returns that you'd like. Bringing that back to the underwriting is if they want to make money and double their money in 2 years, let's say, like that doesn't meet the goal of what we're after. And so my underwriting has to match their investment goals. Does that make sense? So when we go look at a property like the first one we closed back in December of 21, like I said, we hadn't done that. We hadn't acquired that property ourselves. We were brought in to help raise capital. And since we're now dealing with the asset management and whatnot, helping with that. When I first sent that out to my investors, I made sure that they understood how the cash on cash returns work, how the total returns worked, and the whole time frame of that situation. So because a lot of them had never invested in multifamily before, and because of the underwriting, I would get called in by my partners to help discuss the underwriting with them. Because of being the senior underwriter here, I want to make sure that everybody understands what they need to understand about the deal.
Yeah. I don't know. That's amazing. And I think, like you said, there's a few things that anyone could do just to make the numbers huge.
Right.
I know, the cap rate and won't really go into that, but cap rate's the easiest one, and some of the rent growth projections and pro forma rent, all that. There's a lot of easy ways to do that.
Well, I can share the 5 things that I am very anal about, in particular on, are the number one is I can't say there's a most important thing in underwriting, although if I could, it would be this, and that's the current rent, or what we call the market rent, being accurate. And that is what if a unit became vacant today, what could it rent for on a market basis? What's the market say that rents for? And if you don't get that number right up front, then the rest of your projections throughout the whole are going to be off, right? Because everything's based off of what we say day one it should be. So if I have a unit and I say, hey, this unit is worth $1,000 if it's vacant today, but it's really only $950, I'm now $50 off to begin with. And you would never know that if you hadn't done a market survey, if you hadn't looked at the rent roll and seen what those units are currently getting, right? And that $50, if you grow 2% a year for the next 5 years, ends up being $5 per unit. Doesn't sound like a whole lot, but when you look at a $55 difference in rent of what it should be when it's exponentially grown over a 5-year hold, times that by, let's say you have 100 units at that, you're going to end up being, I could just do the math real quick. So if I'm off by $55 by the time it grows, times 100 units, and then we times that by 12 months, so it's a year's worth, that's $66,000.
Yeah.
Well, divide that by a 5 cap, that's $1.32 million in valuation difference because you messed up on that current rent, right? So that's huge. And like you said, the reversion cap rate or the cap rate at sale, that's a huge difference. If you're off by 50 basis points on that, and we could dive into that if you want or not, because that's deeper stuff. But these are all things that you need somebody looking at, either as an investor, if you want to be passive, you should have an idea of how to look at that, or at least have them, you might not even know what it means, but just a simple, like, how did you come up with that? When you ask your sponsor that question, expense growth is huge on taxes and insurance, especially in Dallas. I said I would never invest in Dallas again, right? When I sold my Grand Prairie property. Well, here I am investing in Dallas. The difference, we know about it and we account for it. I didn't know about it and I didn't account for it because I was, a naive, brand new investor. So I'm not scared to invest in Dallas. I love investing in Dallas. It's just now we account for those tax increases, right? Whereas I didn't when I bought that first property in Grand Prairie. And then what's the business plan, right? Are we renovating units? Are we adding amenities? And why are we doing it? If we're renovating units to get a better rent bump, well, what's the demographics of that area? What's the 1 mile median household income? Can they afford the boost that we're going to do? When I first started with those Alabama properties, I bought a fourplex. It was $105,000 for 4 1-bedroom units. Like, that's cheap, right? And I'm like, I'm going to burr this thing, the bigger pockets, buy, renovate, refinance, rent, blah, 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 repeat type thing. And I told my property management manager, hey, let's go in there and renovate those units. Let's put in nice countertops. She's like, this isn't that kind of neighborhood.
Yeah.
Like, no, like, we're going to clean it up, throw some paint, throw a little lipstick, and rent it out again for $500. Oh, so you don't just burr every property you buy. Like, no, you have to be in the right neighborhood for those kinds of things. She's like, this property is going to do fantastic for you, but we're not going to do that to it. And that's where the local area knowledge that I didn't have come in. My property manager. So when you see a business plan that's like, hey, we're going to go renovate, we're going to put in granite and backsplash and blah, 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 and then charge $400 more. It's like, are you? Like, is that, you can go do all that, but are you going to be able to rent it for that? Because this demographic might not be able to afford that. So that's another thing in the underwriting I look at is the business plan. Does it match where it's at? And I learned that the hard way in my Alabama properties. And then the last thing is the debt. What kind of debt is on this property? We saw those recent foreclosures in Houston. I looked at the underwriting on those. I was able to pull those from old emails I had. The underwriting's not bad. I looked at it and I was like, wow, this is actually looks great underwriting, except for one thing, the debt. Yeah. The debt was put in there in the 3% range, 3.5% range. Like, that's great debt, but the problem was it floated, right? And there was no interest rate cap. But if you didn't know that, and you didn't know to ask that, you'd look at that underwriting and be like, this is solid. It's very sound underwriting on the surface until you ask about it. So, there's a lot more to underwriting than those 5 things, but as a quick, like, boom, 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 I want to know those things are accurate. And, that first one I mentioned, which is the current realistic current or market rents, is so huge because everything else grows off of that. Yeah.
I love that breakdown. I know you have a lot more you can talk about that, but just kind of want to recap that quickly for the audience and hit the highlights. So the current rent being accurate, and that is if it's rented out tomorrow, what could we get for it? The cap rate, the reversion cap rate, the terminal cap rate, whatever you want to call it, when the deal's going to sell or refinance, what's that cap rate going to be? Growth of expenses, property tax, insurance, et cetera. What's the business plan, and then what's the debt? And for the audience, I know Mike is an expert in this. You don't have to be an expert, but to Mike's point, you need to know that that is all accounted for, that the general sponsorship team, and in this case, Mike, if you review the underwriting with him, you say, hey, where'd you come up with that? And in the pitch decks, there should be comps of the other units. You should have data from your own market research. You should have data from a trusted, well-known property management company, where you can say, hey, here's the rents. There's professional third-party data to kind of help with the cap rate, reversion cap rate. What's that going to be in 3, 5, 7 years? At least to give you an idea. I mean, they can't predict anything, but they do have forecast. As far as the expenses growth, that's local knowledge. Brandon and Andy In this case, in a deal in Dallas, and property management companies. Business plan, have they executed this business plan before? And in real estate, there's thousands of ways you can invest. And so are they doing this for the first time, or have they done this before? Value add, is it 3-year hold? Is it 5 years? Is it 10-year? A lot of different business plans out there and strategies. So you want to make sure that the GPs, the active partners, know what the plan is, and they know how to execute it. And then finally, as Mike mentioned, debt is huge. It's become much of a bigger issue because there's been such a huge rate increase, and we're recording on May 4th, 23, and the Fed just increased rates yesterday as well. So that is huge. I don't think anyone knew it was going to be this much this soon, but that can get people in trouble if the debt is not right. So there's other stuff you should know, before you invest in a deal. You want to know, like, and trust the sponsorship team, know that they have experience, but those are some phenomenal points, especially from the underwriting standpoint. So Mike, really appreciate you going over that in great detail. I know you kind of touched on this, Mike, towards the beginning, but you refinanced a home. You had some capital. You said, I need to deploy this capital. So you bought some, what you thought may have been passive investments. Turned out they weren't really. But how did you come up with the capital for any other investments that you've done? Do you mind maybe talking about that? And maybe there's not any other ways.
Yeah, sure. So mainly, we got a HELOC on our house, on our primary residence. We had some equity in here. So yeah, I was able to have basically a line of credit, which HELOC is. For those of you who don't know, a home equity line of credit, you have some equity in your house. You have, we used a credit
union.
Credit union. Thank you. Through my dad, my mom's new husband. And we really get a great rate on it. And so it doesn't cost me anything to have it. It just sits there and I'm able to pull from it if I need it. So I invested in a property with that, 2 properties with using that. And then when I sold my Alabama properties, I took my gains from that and paid off the HELOC. So my HELOC is now, I'm not using it at all right now, but it's there waiting for me to use again. Yeah. So I have, the interest rates have gone up. So the cost of that capital will be more to borrow from. But if the right deal comes up, I can use that and, pay, even if I pay 6-7% right now, my cash on cash from another property might not cover that, but my total returns will. Yeah. So it's just that arbitrage, right? Like I'll pay 5%, 6% to borrow money if I'm going to get, 15-20% here from something else, right? Because that's still a 10-15% gain on the long run. And to me, that doesn't bother me to have money going out right now to pay interest and to get it back later on the back end. Does that make sense? So, yep. And then I save, nurses get paid really well. I hate to admit, in California, which is the main reason I still live here. Don't hold it against me. I live in California. Northern California is very different. For those of you in Tennessee and Texas, they pay us really well though to be nurses. So we save and then we reinvest, and yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. We actually have a HELOC as well, and that's how we've gotten into some additional properties, and exact same mindset as you, Mike. I'm fine paying, 4, 5, 6, 7% and getting a 15-20% return. And it might not be this year, might not be next year, but in a few years, get a nice return, pay off the HELOC, have a lot of money left over, and then go ahead and repeat that process multiple times. So love that strategy. And like I said, thank you for sharing. What's the goals over the next 9 to 12 months with Guardian Multifamily? And I guess before you answer that, I know you guys just hosted a summit, Veterans in Real Estate Summit. That was in Dallas, Texas. Can you talk about that a little bit? Just what'd you cover? Who goes there? Just kind of go over that for a minute or two.
Absolutely. So Brandon, my partner Brandon, is a Marine veteran. He's got a heart for veterans, for many branch. And one thing he wants to do is educate them and empower them to be able to invest in not just commercial real estate or multifamily real estate, but any real estate. So he's the second year now he's put on this Veterans in Real Estate Summit, or VIRE, as he calls it. And he had it at the Frontiers in Flight Museum at Love Field, which is a super cool venue. So we had a good amount of people show up, veterans, and what he did was he broke it into like a single family side, and then a residential side, and a commercial side. So people broke off to whatever niche they felt they wanted to be with. So we had fix and flip over here, BRRRR strategies, short-term rentals on that side. And then on the other side, we had storage. We had multifamily, underwriting. I talked about underwriting, which put everybody to sleep, but that's fine. I loved it. It's like one of those things, if you're passionate about underwriting, it's like, whoa, that was really cool. If you're not, which, then you're just taking a nap. But
right.
So it was cool just to hear about, it wasn't just multifamily. It's like, hey, we have all these options. Like, what clicks with you? It might not be apartments. It might be storage, and storage is fantastic. We're not opposed to looking into storage at all.
Sure.
But right now we're focused on multifamily. And so it was really cool just that he's got a heart for veterans and helping them, so that we don't have the crisis of the Vietnam era veterans, right? Like, these guys served our community, and we want to go back, give back to them, and empower them to take over their lives in business, in business and investing and whatever. And Brandon is really active in their community with helping them with that. In terms of our goals going forward, like, our number one goal right now is to have our current properties perform well, so that we can give our investors the returns we told them. I said we had closed on 194 units in December of 21. We closed on 89 units in Fort Worth submarket in May of 22. Since then, we've been looking at properties, underwriting properties. Can't get anything to work at this moment. But like, for me, I don't care if we get a deal, as long as my properties we have are working and they're doing well. We've had some challenges with occupancy at one of them. We've had plumbing challenges at one of them, and leaks. Like, we want to make sure those are running at full steam, and our delinquency's low, our vacancy's low, NOI is going up. We're focusing on those things because, like I said, guarding our investor capital is number one. Guarding our tenants, our residents' lives, and their dignity at those properties, that they have a nice, clean place where the air conditioning works, the plumbing, they don't have leaks into their living room, things like that. Like, that's the number one priority, is taking care of the properties we already have. Number two is finding more properties, getting more investment opportunities for our investors. And so going forward, we'd like to close, I think when the year started, we said we'd like to close 2 this year. Here we are in May. We don't have anything under contract at the moment, but that's fine. Like, if we're looking, we're trying. But if nothing happens, like, we're not going to force something just to say, hey, we hit our goal of 2 properties or whatever, So if we can get 1 this year, great. If not, as long as the properties we have are doing well and we can give our investors the returns we said, that's our goal. So
very cool. Love that answer. Is the VIRE Veterans in Real Estate Summit, is that going to be an annual thing?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Well, this year, I think he's going to do another one next year. The funnest part, I'll just side note, at the end, the VIPs and the speakers went and did virtual reality. I didn't know that you could go to these places. Dallas is a huge city, has several. I went to this place called Sandbox or something. I don't know Dallas super well, but Sandbox virtual reality. And we rented these pods, and you go in there with a team of 6 people, and you're all decked out with goggles and everything. I don't know if you've ever done like the Oculus, but it's like that. And you're in there together in this box. It is so fun. And so we hunted zombies and aliens and stuff. And let me tell you, when you go do virtual reality with a bunch of Marines where you're shooting up things, it is hilarious. Like, it's just, they know what they're doing.
Right.
Even the staff at the end was like, man, you guys communicated a lot better than most groups. Most people are just screaming, which was me. I was screaming the whole time. Yeah. But the Marines were all, communicating well. Like,
that's awesome. I've never done any VR. Well, I did. It was years and years ago, and gave me a headache. And I know the technology's gotten a lot better now, but that's really cool. How would you say, and you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, Mike, but how do you think your current profession has helped you in real estate?
So for one, it's being a nurse is I deal with people every single day, right? So like, I would say I'm a people person in terms of I take care of some of the oddest people and the oddest complaints you'll ever meet. Like, you wouldn't believe them, right? But I can give compassion and care to those people just as much as I could give compassion and care to my mom, right? Who I get along with well, and I love her, and she can do no wrong. she might disagree with that, but you know what I mean? Is I can take care of a diverse range of people and give them the same level of care. And what that does is it gives me the ability to meet people where they're at in the real estate. So I'm great at talking to our investors. I'm great at talking to our property management, because that's what I do all day, is talk to people that are in much worse situations, you know, than I guess what I'm saying is, when I meet people, they're usually having a really bad day in my job, right? And so because of that, like, I can connect with people in a range of situations. That, and my job can be very stressful. Like, things can go bad very quickly in a very small, dark place at night in a small helicopter, right? And so I have to think quickly, act quickly, oftentimes to keep somebody alive, you know, in certain cases. So because of that, it's like, there's not much that stresses me out outside of that, because most things that I encounter in real estate are never that bad, right? Because there's not usually life on the line in real estate. So I guess I don't get rattled very easily in real estate, because it's like, there's nothing that compares to that. So in terms of preparing me, it's like, yeah, this real estate journey throws a lot of curveballs at you. It is not always, oh, the real estate's the best thing ever, there's going to be no problems. There's a lot of problems. You own 100 units somewhere, there's going to be problems. You know, that's 100 lives, 100 toilets, you know, maybe 200 toilets. Things go bad at those places, but we have systems in place. And back to the point of single family, it's a lot easier to deal with 100, 200 toilets when you have on-site property management and on-site maintenance than it is when you're halfway across the country or all the way across the country and your property manager doesn't even know about it for days. You know, you have leaks, and now you have more expenses. And
very cool. I really like that answer. You don't stress out easily. You know how to deal with people, take care of people. You meet them where they're at, and you can connect with them. And I think that's really important, because in real estate, we are talking to lots of different types of people: contractors, property management companies, lenders, insurance, you know, just tons of different types of people. So it is really nice to be able to connect with them. What would you say to other professionals in your same field in nursing, to maybe get them interested in real estate?
So I have had a couple people invest, one that's a nurse, a couple doctors. Actually, one of my paramedic partners have invested. In terms of others, you know, for me, it's transitioning at work, because everybody knows me at work. We're not a huge hospital, so everybody knows each other. It's making people realize, like, hey, that's Mike the nurse, or is that Mike the real estate investor? And so that's number one, is, do they even know that what I'm doing? And so that, you know, that's getting on social media, talking about it at work. And then once they start asking me those questions of, hey, what are you doing? You know, like, I'm like, I'm investing in real estate because XYZ, because we make good money here. What are you doing with it? Are you putting it all in your 403B? Are you, is it just sitting in your bank account? And so what I really try to educate them on is, like, that money sitting in your bank account is going down in value because of inflation. That money sitting in our 403B, if we had looked at it 3 months ago, I was down, I want to say like 20% in my 403B year over year. It's back up almost even now for year over year. So it has recovered some, but at the same time, it's like, that's so volatile. Like, I might not be making great cash flow from our multifamily, but I know my property value is going up, because I can look at the financials and see our NOI going up, you know? And that's a whole nother topic of how we increase the value of a property by increasing the net operating income. That's a rabbit hole we can go down at a different time. But the point being is, like, what I want to stress to the nurses I work with is, like, do you want to be doing this until you're 65 or 70? Like, we have nurses that work in our hospital, been doing it that long. It's like, you know, you just need different streams of income that you're comfortable with, that meet your risk profile. Otherwise, you're going to be doing this your entire life, which is fine. And that, if that's what they want to do, that's great. But if they want to diversify their investments and not just do 403B, not just dabble in the stock market, you know, like, then this is just a great opportunity, I think. And yeah, it's just trying to stress to them that. And then they're like, well, aren't you just a nurse? And like, I am just a nurse. However, I'm also just a real estate investor. But then, like, I want to do what you do, you know, like, we want to do that. That sounds great. But they want to, and then I ask them this, Do you want to be a real estate investor or do you want to invest in real estate? There's a big difference.
Yeah.
We are real estate investors. We work to invest in real estate. And that it's almost an active job for us, right? Because we go do these things. I'm underwriting properties. I'm going to Huntsville and looking at properties. So I'm a real estate investor doing that. If I wanted to be solely passive, then I would just invest in real estate. And that's truly what most people want to do when you nail them down on it. It's like, okay, do you want to go to Dallas with me and look at property? Do you want to go to Huntsville with me and look at property? Do you want to underwrite for hours with me and learn how to do that? Well, no, they just want to put money on a property. It's like, okay, right. Now that we have actually drilled down what you want to do, you thought you wanted to do what I do, which is syndicate apartments, but then you realized actually that's more work than I wanted to do. Okay. So you don't want to be a real estate investor. You want to invest in real estate. And so it's just nailing people down on what their goals are, what their risk tolerance is. And back to the initial thing I said was their time frames. When you'd asked about the underwriting returns and stuff, is if we're looking at a 5-year hold, are you able to part with your money for 5 years? Because I have some people that can invest, but they might have something coming up in 3 years that they need that money for. And then I don't want your money. We got to make sure that our goals align with your goals. And just because you want to invest with me doesn't mean I'm going to take your money either, because I want to make sure that in 2 years, when you need that money back and we can't give it to you, that's going to be a problem. So it's kind of sorry, but
no, that's okay. I love that. And I think to your point, Mike, a lot of people want to invest in real estate. They don't want it to be a second job. You're very passionate about this. And so you love it for a ton of reasons. But to invest in real estate, you don't have to love it. You just need to know the benefits and the risks, returns, kind of how it works. And I've spoken to many people who have been active in the real estate side for years and years and years. They don't want that anymore. They want passive income. And so they know the ins and outs. And so they're like, yeah, multifamily is a phenomenal vehicle to bring passive income to me, whether there is cash flow or not. Over time, there will be. And then the next point, just real quickly, I learned about 403B a couple months ago. And just to quickly sum that up, that's a 401k, but for nonprofits. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. And our hospital is a nonprofit. Yeah.
Okay. Exactly. And did you know that with a 403B, you may be eligible to invest in real estate?
Yeah. So what happens is I can't take that 403B and invest in real estate with it right now. If I did, I would be pulling money out and being taxed on it. What happens is when I leave my current employer, that 403B frees up and typically will roll into an IRA, right? So it leaves 403B land and becomes an IRA land. Well, when I do that rollover, I can put it into a self-directed IRA. And instead of putting it into a traditional IRA that is, managed by somebody, I can put it in one where I manage it and I can invest that money into real estate. Or what I'll likely do is a solo 401k at that time, which has some different tax advantages compared to a solo IRA. Self-directed IRA. But that's, I don't love talking about that stuff too much just because it is, and we're not CPAs, we're not custodians, we're not attorneys. We can get ourselves in trouble if we get too much, but there are advantages to that and you just need to be aware. And we're more than happy to, either of us can direct you to the right people for those kind of conversations for sure.
Cool. So we have a few minutes left. I want to talk about a recent book that stands out to you, Real Estate Business Self-Help.
Absolutely. So funny enough, I started this thing called 75 Hard. I've never been a big reader, at all.
Yeah. That's how I started reading.
75 Hard. Yep. And part of it's you read 10 pages a day of a book that's business related or self-help, improvement related. So during that time, I have read Never Split the Difference, which is an awesome book on negotiating, how to win friends and influence people, which is basically like how to not be a jerk, which is funny to read it. I'm like, man, this guy, how do I even have friends? Because I'm pretty sure I'm doing everything wrong in this book. But the latest one I started is Traction. And I'm only about 70, 80 pages into that one, but I'm seeing that one as being probably as far as full on business improvement goes, I think this is going to be phenomenal for us in our group. Really makes you focus down on what are your objectives, and a 90-day time frame, a 3-year time frame, a 10-year time frame, and you start with the 10-year and you work your way back so that you have clearly defined goals and objectives and assignments, like how are you going to get there? And so you have the things, I know when I wake up today, I'm going to do this, right? To get to that goal. Versus just like, well, I can't wait for a broker to send me a property, that might work out someday. Like, you're never going to get anywhere doing that,
Right.
So what is my actionable thing today that I'm going to do to get me closer to that 10-year goal, or to that 3-year goal? And
Very
tracking.
cool.
Like I said, I just started, but I'm already loving it. So I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, thank you. I've read the first two. Actually, I read How to Win Friends and Influence People when I did 75 Hard last year. And so that's a really good book. I love Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. He was a former, I think, FBI interrogator or lead FBI interrogator, something like that. And so just listening to or reading that book was just like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah, he mixes his hostage negotiation stories in there.
What can people expect to see from you and from Guardian Multifamily over the next few years?
So, kind of back to our goals is if we can get, we don't want to scale too fast, basically. I see a lot of syndication groups that it's like, 10 deals a year, maybe. And it's like, how are you managing those well?
Right.
And maybe just helping raise capital and dealing with the investor relations and things like that, which is totally fine. But for us, we want to be owner operators. We want to go buy these things, syndicate them, and operate them ourselves. So we don't want to scale that too quickly because we want to do it right. And we want to make sure that, back to what we care about the most, tenants, investors, staff, that we do nourish those things along the way, and it's not just scale too quickly. So that we're not opposed also to diversifying, like I said, into storage. We're, at some point it's okay to pivot, right, and focus on something else. We won't leave multifamily, but it's like, hey, maybe we do multifamily and storage. So it's commercial real estate. They act very similarly, right? It's still a building and it has a purpose of cash flows and whatnot. So we're not opposed to diversifying ourselves a little bit in our offerings. So that, and then, I guess just going back to what I said of the scaling too fast, and if we could just get our investors the goals, our goal is to get our investors sorry, just edit that part out.
No
I
problem.
lost my but really just to hit the returns that we've said for our investors. We're in a deal now. It'll be coming up on 2 years, our first deal at the end of this year. So on our horizon, we have another 3 years left on that one. If we could get our investors the returns we set on that, we'd be so excited, and that's ultimately what our goal is take care of the investors' returns.
Awesome. Very cool. And then finally, how can people reach you?
Several ways. You can email me. It's mike@guardianmultifamily.com. I do have a calendar that you can always hop on and schedule some time with me. And that's easy, www.chatwithmikeherman.com. We'll take you right to my calendar. You can go to our website, guardianmultifamily.com. We have a free ebook there that you're welcome to download. It just has it's about 20, 25 pages, pretty easy to digest content, just kind of walking you through the multifamily syndication process. Has some tips in there for underwriting as well of what to look for. Those would be the easiest ways, I think, either one of those.
Awesome. Well, Mike, man, thank you so much for being here. I really love your story and love the wisdom that you shared with the audience on underwriting and lots of other things. But really, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate the time.
No, thanks for having me, Charlie. It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Have a good day, Mike.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to today's show, brought to you by H&K Investment Group, your home for passive investing. If you want to learn more about how you can invest with us, please check out our website at hkigllc.com. Don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to our podcast. Please leave us a review to let us know how we are doing. Feel free to connect with me directly on LinkedIn or Facebook. As always, I'm your host, Charlie Hardage. Catch you next time.